First of all, thanks everybody for being here. I am extremely, extremely happy, proud, and honored to be in front of you. A little bit before we get started, obviously that's Las Vegas, big surprise. Dave and Jason, I owe a big round of applause to internally. They've done everything to help me get through this. About a month ago, had some pretty significant trials and tribulations in my personal life and wasn't sure I was going to do it. And Intuitive sent the henchmen, Dave Heitzman and Jason Hart, out to me, basically said, "You're going to do this." And I said, "You sure?" I said, "You're sure." Anyway, long story short, we got this done. I got my data, we got the slides, we've done some rehearsals. And if you see Jason in the front kind of going like this, it means increase the enthusiasm. So that's Jason's job for me today. A little bit more about me. You can see what I've done here. A couple things that aren't on here, which I'm kind of proud of. That's my Yale ring. It's my Ivy League championship ring. It's something I'm very proud of. It's not something that I tell a lot of people about unless I get to really know them well. The other thing, I'm a doting father of 3 little girls, Emily, Sophia, and Kennedy. And today's Kennedy's 4th birthday, and I'm going to miss it, so I'll be FaceTiming later. But the fact is that this means so much to me to be out here that I missed my daughter's 4-year-old birthday, and she'll... Don't worry, she doesn't yearn for anything, trust me, she's fine. I also take care of my 94-year-old demented mother who, this isn't a story for anything that you guys want to know, but it's a cradle-to-grave story. I'm an Italian kid from New Jersey who grew up with a really strong family background, and I told my mom and dad, my dad's passed away, I told my mom, no matter what happens, I'll never put you in a nursing home, and we take care of it at my house. She doesn't know who we are, she doesn't know what's going on, but she's with me until she's gone. And lastly, not leastly, my friends always joke to me, "What are you, saving lives all day?" I'm like, "Yeah, hernias and gallbladders, I'm saving lives all day." I happened to be on call on October 1, a year and a half ago. Just happened to be my luck. And I actually think from operating all night and being up all the next day, I actually probably saved about 4 or 5 lives that day. And it's just something I'm really proud of. It's not something a lot of people know about. So anyway, that's a little bit more about me. So this is where we practice. We're going to focus on the efficiency and pain that I've come accustomed to. And you see the average case is 5 by noon. That's actually pretty accurate. One more story I want to bring here. That's my brother. He's no longer with us. He was 8 years older than me. I went to Yale. He never went to college. I became a doctor. He never really had a job. He was one of those lost souls, as we like to say. Wasn't a bad person. Is someone that I loved and wanted to look up to, but he was controlled by demons, as I like to say. Nonetheless, 2 years ago, right around this time, not to the day, pretty close, I flew back to New Jersey on a red eye on a Wednesday night, and I got a couple of frantic text messages from my 2 older sisters, which I would never get. Long story short, I was in Manhattan at a meeting, and they called to tell me that my brother had passed away from a fentanyl overdose. And it was a horrifying experience. It's something that I didn't think would happen to me. It's one of those things you never think will happen to you until it does happen to you. It's just unfortunate. And we're going to talk about some of the issues with opioids, and we're going to show you how I've been able to reduce them. And this is just, again, something that's a personal thing for me that kind of hits home for obvious reasons. So we'll move on. This is my practice. As you can see, the majority of my cases are hernias and gallbladders. I've now branched out into colorectal. 635 cases in the last 12 months. I can't do the math on that, but I think Jared Barrows will tell you those are some pretty good numbers right there. We're hitting our quota, right? Just getting there. Anyway. So, guys, there's a timer up here, and it's got 25 minutes left, so stop applauding. Do it at the end. So I just want to show you my growth curve. And the 30 cases initially were a year and a half ago. And then if you see the 73, I was at the 360 in Miami, not this year, but the year prior, and I remember sitting with Michelle Delgado, and we were talking. We actually called my scheduler at the time and said, Sandra, let's book, we had cases coming up. I said, let's take this hernia and this gallbladder, et cetera, and move them to robotics. And then gradually, I would see patients in the office, and I'd say, why am I going to do this patient open? I can do it robotically. And as I got my speed and my efficiency and my confidence, I started moving all my stuff to robotics. And now, as you can see, we're at, it says 18, but I think that means 180 something. I could be wrong. It's not 8. Anyway, we're at 160 or so a quarter. I think it's a pretty good number still. So what do we do in Vegas? We have weekly case observations. We bring CSRs, doctors out. The other folks that we should bring out, and you guys should keep this in mind, are some of your OR staff. Because not only do I want to show the surgeons how we operate and what we do and what our procedures are, but the time between our cases, and I'll show you this in a later slide, is 10 to 12 minutes. I've had doctors come in from Jersey, from California, from Texas, and they really marvel at our turnover times. They're just phenomenal. And the team really, really is phenomenal, not only at Valley, but yesterday at Siena Hospital, I had to text Michelle and let her know that we started at 7. I walked out of the hospital at 11:30, and we did 2 gallbladders, 2 umbilicals, and an inguinal. We did 5 cases. I walked out of the hospital at 11:30, 4.5 hours. I had a meeting at 12 o'clock, which I was going to be late to, but I was early too. So we try and do a case an hour is what my mantra is. The team is very important. We have 2 nurses, 2 techs, and sometimes the tech is a first assist, which helps a lot in turning the room over and me getting out of the room early. And you always hear this, football analogy. You have to buy in. What is buy in? Bill Belichick, you have to buy in. Nick Saban, you have to buy in. Well, you do have to buy in when you're working with me. You have to understand that we're going to move, we're going to work, we're going to operate. We're not going to dilly-dally. We're not going to fool around. So when they know I'm in the room, the team has bought into the fact that we're going to be efficient. We're going to have a good day. We're going to work, but we're going to be efficient. And that's how we run it. We have patient. We start at 7 o'clock too, and I'll go over that later too. So my old hernia practice, what was it? Standard, 8, 10 centimeter incision, bloody surgery, 25, 50 cc's of blood loss. Every single one of them got an opioid prescription, and the majority of them actually called back and got a refill. Now, these are the old days when the prescribing laws weren't that hard, so they could call up and your MA could say, Dr. Caravella, can Mr. Jones have another pain script? And you're like, yeah, just give it to him, just give it to him. And that's really the way we did it, and it's not the best way to do it, but it's the easiest way to do it. But with the more strict prescribing laws throughout the country, that's just not as easy anymore. So I said to myself, what's better? Well, laparoscopic. I didn't like laparoscopic. I did a few laparoscopic procedures, maybe 2 dozen, probably 15 years ago. Limitations of straight stick, as you know, it's just not the same as a 3-dimensional robotic arm. The balloon dissector caused a lot of pain. I didn't like it. And laparoscopic tackers, they cause chronic pain in a fair amount of patients. I've actually taken tacks out of patients years down the road for chronic pain, and they do actually a lot better once you get those tacks out of the pubic tubercle. So I didn't like it, and to be very honest with you, some laparoscopes are good, some aren't, and I really can't tell you that the best laparoscope is as good as the worst Da Vinci camera that I've ever seen. So a light bulb went on, and I came back to Da Vinci. The light bulb's coming on. Oh, here's the light bulb. You can take this, I don't need it. So, Michelle Delgado, Michelle Grad, which is what she was when I first met her, she trained me in 2013. I stalled. It wasn't really her fault, but I stalled. I came back into it in 2016, 2017. I would really, literally walk around the OR and peek into the rooms that were doing robotic cases because I really didn't understand what a robotic inguinal hernia was. I'd done open and laparoscopic. I'm like, well, what are they doing in there with robotics? It doesn't really make sense to me. So I would literally peek into the rooms, and Michelle would see me peeking and come out and say, hey, this is what we're doing, blah, blah, blah. She engaged me in a very professional and supportive manner, and one thing led to another, and she came up with a great plan for me. Listen, if you want to start doing this, we can do it. We can do them on Saturdays. We won't disrupt your elective practice. We won't cause you, pain in scheduling. I'll work with your schedule. We'll get all the stuff taken care of for you. We'll have, Dr. Fusco, Dr. Schauer, they're my colleagues. We'll have them proctor you. I look up to them. They've been very, very good at what they do. So that's Michelle. That's her husband, Tommy, and her 2 little daughters. And by the way, Michelle's actually missing her daughter's 4th birthday, which was a couple days ago. So we have that in common. Unfortunately, I think a lot of you guys also know Michelle lost a brother to opioid dependence. So we actually have quite a few bonds together. Michelle's been really wonderful to me, a great CSR, and more importantly, a great friend. So I owe a lot of what I've done to this point to Michelle. So just give her a quick round of applause. So what happened? I actually became hooked. That's an anchor, but I became hooked. I told Dave, next year, let's make this a hook. So anyway, I became hooked or anchored on the inguinal. I had dinner with Rox and Lou last night, and we both kind of sat there and looked at each other, and he goes, I used to hate doing open inguinal hernias. I go, I dreaded it. I go, now I see an inguinal on my schedule. I love it. I can't wait to get there. The procedure is so nice. It's so elegant. It's so atraumatic. And the results that I see afterwards really make me go, this is really how I want to do stuff. This procedure has actually, I don't want to sound corny, but it's kind of reinvigorated me and kind of given me a new look or new outlook on my surgical practice, because I've been doing it now for 16 years. And I got, with 3 little kids, probably another 10 or 15 years. So it's nice to know that I actually look forward to doing this stuff again instead of dreading it. So when I started doing this, what did I see? And you can probably talk to a lot of surgeons who do a lot of inguinals, and they'll give you some stories. So there's a couple patients that I remember specifically. There was a 50-year-old guy, I think his name was John. He was real well-built, big guy, kind of like Chance, but he had a shaved head. And he came into my office, and I said, John, what are you doing? We haven't done your surgery yet. He goes, Doc, we did my surgery 8 days ago. He goes, I feel great. I'm on my elliptical. I'm running. He goes, I feel phenomenal. I'm like, your surgery's done. I actually had to look at his incisions to see he actually had a surgery, but he felt great. Then I did an 82-year-old woman who was as frail as paper mache. I was like, this is just going to go bad. Nothing good's going to come out of this. This lady's not going to make it, blah, 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 DDD. We did her inguinal robotically. She came back to see me 10 days later with her daughter and her granddaughter, walking her walker in, and she felt great. She hopped up on the exam table. I looked at her incisions. I said goodbye to her, never saw her again. And I said, you know what? These are light bulb patients. These are patients that make me go, this thing really works. This is the way to do it. And again, just to talk about our dinner last night, Roxanne and I were talking, and I said to myself, there really shouldn't be a reason that an inguinal hernia is done in America, not robotically. There's no reason to do an open inguinal, for one. And this doesn't compare to laparoscopy. Laparoscopy doesn't have anything on this whatsoever. You can't think that laparoscopy is any better than this. And I've had docs come in from out of town, and we have a dual console at Valley Hospital. And when they look in there, they're like, this visualization is phenomenal. They're like, you can't see laparoscopically what you can see robotically, and it's just a game changer. So we all know there's a bigger problem. I've talked about it. I told you about my brother. I think you guys heard Michelle's story. You probably know someone or know someone who knows someone who's got an opioid problem. And I'm not saying the whole opioid crisis in America is due to inguinal hernias, because that's obviously not true. There's patients, or there's people who have problems throughout the country just because they have a problem. But I think the problem is a lot of the times they get started is because of a dental procedure, an orthopedic procedure, a hernia. So we are part of the problem. This is staggering. If you look at this, and I'm pretty good at math, so if you divide 50 by 100, that's 2 people per state every day that die, every day. Now you multiply that by a year, you're talking about 750 or so patients or people per year that die every year. It's a staggering number. The economic impact is about $80 billion. And we all listen to politics on our different news channels and so forth, and this deficit and that number, and they want to build this wall for that many billions. I don't know a lot of things in America that cost $80 billion, but the economic impact from opioid abuse in America is $80 billion. That's a CDC statistic. I didn't make it up. Dave Heitzman got it, and that's a true statistic. These numbers this is very important. So when you're talking to your surgeons and you're trying to incorporate them and you're trying to recruit them into a robotic practice, they don't want to hear about the mesh or your product or your anatomy. This is something you can talk to them about. 20 to 30% of patients who get opioids will end up misusing them. So this happens to them too, and they have patients coming back all the time. I don't have patients coming back to me asking for more opioids because I don't give out opioids anymore. So I don't have to deal with this problem. This is even more staggering. 5% of those patients will transition to heroin, which is obviously not something you call in for, it's something you get on the street. So now you've gone from getting a procedure, 20 to 30% of them misusing them, and then 1 out of 20 of them transitioning onto a street drug called heroin. It's really, really a problem. I think you guys see that. I think I've belabored it, but this is a very important slide. Studies show that once you hit a usage curve of 5 days, your chances of becoming an addict or an abuser of that particular drug go up exponentially. So most docs that I know give 30 or 40 pills. And if you divide that by 4 pills a day, you're talking about a 7.5 to 10 day supply of opioids. So most docs I know give 30 or 40 pills. They're way past the 5 days. You're going to increase that patient's chance of becoming dependent on an opioid considerably. 30% increase in opioid-related emergencies in the US. To the right, you can see some of the demographics. I'm not sure what to make of that. I've tried to figure out why the Midwest is higher than the West and the Northwest and so forth. The point is that it's an epidemic, it's a problem, it's continuing, and we can be at the forefront of trying to help stop it, or at least prevent or slow it down. This slide, almost 50,000 people every year die. Most of us, including myself, even though I'm 50, don't remember the Vietnam War. But if you've ever read any history or you've heard about it, 51 or 52,000 people died in Vietnam. And that was a huge deal, and it's still a huge deal. We have a Vietnam War every year in America based on opioid abuse. It's a staggering number. It's nothing to shun at. We all need to take our part and our responsibility in trying to get this number down, and we can, at least from this small group of people who do hernias, we can get that number down to a more manageable number. So I took a look at my own results. I don't know who those 2 people are, but I know what my results are. Again, Dave, we did a good job on the slides, but so I looked at, or someone looked at, I think Ray Witkowski looked at, a series of hernias I did from April to August. There was about 100 hernias, and we gave out 5 scripts for opioids, which ballpark is about 6% opioid prescription. And I didn't give any of these people the opioids at the time of surgery. What I did was gave them Tylenol and ibuprofen, and I'll go over that. They called in the next day and said they wanted a script, and we gave them maybe 10 or 20 tramadol. I'm very, very conservative on what I give them, even if they call in. So what I want you guys to know is that expectations for patients are really key. And again, this is something you can discuss and you can talk to your surgeon with, on a one-on-one. The pre-op expectations are really the key. So when I get to the pre-op area, I'll say to the patient, Mr. Jones, we're going to fix your inguinal hernia. As we talked about, we're going to use the robotic technique. You're going to have 3 small incisions that'll be this big. After surgery, you're going to get 2 scripts, 1 for Tylenol and 1 for ibuprofen. Take them every 6 hours. Don't wait to be in pain at 7, 8, 9 hours. Take them every 6 hours for 3 to 5 days, and you shouldn't need anything else. However, if the pain's excruciating, you can't tolerate it, and it's just too much for you, call our office, and we'll call a script in for you. With that being said, they know where they're at. They actually get the script for Tylenol and ibuprofen, which you can get over the counter, but patients seem to like to get a script. It's almost a mental thing. So we give them a script, and they go fill it, and they think, oh, this is great. I got a script from the doctor. It's funny, but it's true. Intraoperatively, my anesthesiologist will give 1,000 milligrams of IV Tylenol, which is a very, very good adjunct to pain. Another very interesting thing is that in the recovery room, the nurses will put an ice pack on the incision, and they'll give 1,000 milligrams of a drug called Robaxin. Interestingly, I queried one of my PACU nurses at Valley Hospital, and I said, Julie, when I used to do open inguinals, what was the narcotic requirement in the recovery room? She's like, Demerol, morphine, Dilaudid, Toradol, etc. I go, how about now with the robotics? You're seeing a lot less? She goes, most of the patients don't even require a narcotic in the recovery room, which you can't find any surgeon in the country who's done a laparoscopic or an open inguinal that can say that in recovery. Everybody gets narcotics in recovery. They always did, they always will. Robotically, if it's done correctly, expectations are set before, you'll have a lot of people walking out of that hospital without getting a narcotic in the recovery room, which I think is phenomenal as a doctor. Hernia Night in America is a great resource. I remember Michelle and I and my mentor, Art Fusco, having a dinner, watching a hernia night, I don't know, a year or so ago. And Dr. Tellerico put his pain regimen up. And I said, boy, this guy's giving Tylenol and ibuprofen and no narcotics. Let me try it. And I was just curious. I wanted to see how many calls I would get after about the pain. And I literally didn't get any calls probably for 3 or 4 months. I'm like, this thing works. And it's easy. There's no DA numbers. There's nothing to go through with, prescribing laws or anything like that. And this is what I do now. My regimen's slightly different, but it's generally the same. And whenever docs come in to do a case obs, I give them a little handwritten thing of what I do and how it works and so forth and so on. So 154, in my patient experience, 154 patients with inguinals. If you look at the top one, 85% of them took less than the 5 days. I give 20 pills, which is 5 days. 85% of them took less than that. The other thing I want you to focus on is the bottom one in red. You can ask your surgeons who are doing open and laparoscopic how many times a patient comes back after an inguinal hernia. If they say just once, they're lying. Because I did open inguinals for 15 years. Incisions are this big. They get big groin hematomas. They go into their scrotum. They complain, they complain, and they complain. And they come back and you say, Mr. Jones, it's going to be okay. It's just going to take time. Well, how long, doctor? 6 to 8 weeks. I'll see you back in a week. They come back in another week. It's a little better. They come back in another week. It's a little better. And they just keep coming back. The appointments are basically tedious. They're hand-holding and they're reassurance. I have maybe 1 out of 10 patients who come back for post-op pain or discomfort or seroma, but it's far, far less than it was when I was doing open inguinals. And it's been a game changer for my clinic especially. Again, the economic impact that opioids are having on this country. If you took all my 240 inguinals and I did all of them open based on the 20% number of misuse, and that's the low end because it can go up to 30, you would see that about 50 patients are going to misuse those. And the economic impact is going to be close to $2 million. Convert all those patients to a robotic procedure and you're going to have about roughly 1 patient who goes on to opioid use and misuse, and that's a $40,000 impact. Those are pretty staggering numbers. So you can see the difference from doing open versus robotic in terms of the economic impact. What do we do and how do I do it? One of my big concerns when I started this was I was a high volume surgeon. I didn't want to slow myself down. I didn't want to stop doing 5 and 6 cases in the morning before clinic and going to do 2 or 3. And I thought the robot was going to do that. It hasn't. I've actually picked up my practice. My speed and my efficiency are better, and my case numbers have not gone down whatsoever. Initially, during my learning curve, my case numbers went down a little bit because things took a little longer, but once I hit my learning curve and I got to where I was, my numbers have actually gotten better. We start at 7 o'clock, which I think is very important. A lot of docs will start at 7:30, which means you get there at 7:30, you get in the room at 7:45, 8 o'clock, you cut at 8:15. We very rarely make an incision after 7:10. Like our patients in the room at 6:55, 7 o'clock, our incision's at 7:10. I may walk out of the room with a case being done if it's a gallbladder at 7:30, 7:35. Most guys aren't even in the hospital yet. So we try and do 4 to 5 cases in the morning before I go to clinic. All my surgeries are done starting at 7, Monday through Friday. I finish at 12 and I get to my clinic at 1 o'clock. So I like to have that control of my schedule. Here you'll see our length of times for each of the cases. The gallbladder is obviously the quickest. It's a much quicker procedure for me now with the robot versus it was laparoscopically. Inguinal hernia is 40 minutes, and these are cut to close. So this includes docking and undocking. I have my first assist usually closed. So once I'm done, I get off the console, I leave, I go to recovery and do my notes, make some rounds. As soon as I'm done with all that, I walk back to the room, and it's about a 12-minute time. This slide here, you have to make sure that your surgeon understands. My first open inguinal, Now, again, I did 20 and 30-minute open inguinals. My first robotic inguinal took 2 hours. I was so disgusted. I was so irritated. I'm like, I can't do this. I'm not that good at this. This is going to be the downfall of me. I'd like to do it. It's just not going to work for me. Well, Michelle kept pushing and pushing, and we did stuff on Saturdays. We did stuff that didn't affect my regular practice. And I don't know what my learning curve was, but what you can see here, after about 50 cases, you get down to where you're going to be. And what I tell people all the time, and the CSRs, you need to know this, if your doctor does an open inguinal in 1 hour, he's going to do a robotic inguinal in 55 to 65 minutes. If it takes him 30 minutes, he's going to do a robotic inguinal in 30 minutes. The robot doesn't make surgeons faster or slower, in my opinion, and it didn't for me. It just makes them better and gives them better outcomes. So that's something you have to impress upon them. And again, I've had docs come in from all over the country, and they marvel at our turnover. It's a 15-minute turnover. It rivals most surgery centers. Most hospitals are 25 to 30 minutes between cases. And that can be a big frustration, especially when you want to get stuff done. You don't want to dilly-dally between cases, and we've pretty much taken care of that. My practice was all open inguinals, open colons, and laparoscopic gallbladders. That's what it was pre-Da Vinci. It's now basically all robotics. The only cases that we do, or I do, open or laparoscopic are call cases where I need to do an open colon and do a colostomy or something for a perforated bowel, or if the robot's not available on a weekend or a night because the staff's not available, so I'll do a gallbladder laparoscopic. But what I can tell you is the laparoscopic gallbladder is not as easy as it used to be now that I'm used to looking into the XI doing my gallbladder. So it's actually been a little bit of a change going backwards to the laparoscopic procedure. The fourth generation, I think you guys know the product just as well as anyone, but the visualization that you see on the fourth generation is so far superior even to the SI that once you get to the XI, it's so hard to do anything else on any other machine. The ability to flip the camera is awesome. The newer instrumentation that we'll be talking about is really second to none. So my two game-changing procedures are the hernia and the colon. I love the hernia, the inguinal hernia. Once you get done with it, you feel like you've really accomplished something. I eventually incorporated colons into my practice, and with the ICA anastomosis, I've seen such a decrease in the length of stay with postoperative ileuses. I did an 82-year-old in my first case. He was up and walking the first post-op day, and we sent him home on post-op day 2. And after that, I said, I can't do a colon knowingly open anymore. It's just not fair to my patients. Forced bipolar, we've been trying this out. This is a newer instrument. It can cut down on the number of instruments used, therefore reducing costs. Also has heat on it. It really is very helpful in inguinal hernias that have a big scrotal component and you need something really strong like a ProGrasp. It also has heat on it, so it's a nice instrument that I've been trying. Increased utilization and reducing variance. So when I used to do open inguinals, I had a 300-pound patient, and then a 200-pound patient, and then a 150-pound patient. So they were all different coming in from the outside. It was a different procedure for every patient. From the robotic standpoint, once you get your trocars in and you get everything set up, it's the same procedure. I won't know who I'm looking at from the inside if it's a well-built guy or an obese patient. They all look the same on the inside, and the procedure is the same. It's a pretty much standardized approach. At least for me it is, and most guys who do, and most docs who do robotics, the procedure is pretty much the same once you get your instruments docked. So the standardized approach, it just really reduces the variation of the procedure and makes things, repetition is the mother of learning, and if you keep doing the same thing right, it gets better. And I always tell people, practice does not make perfect, and keep this in mind when you're getting proctors. Perfect practice makes perfect. You can hit a golf ball 1,000 times the wrong way, and you're still gonna stink at golf. If you get a guy who knows how to teach you and you hit a golf ball 1,000 times the right way, you're going to be a good golfer. So just doing the cases isn't going to make you better. You need to have good proctors and you need to have people who know what they're doing anatomically. The ecosystem at Da Vinci is second to none. The XI platform is phenomenal. The forced bipolar we've talked about in the table motion. The training and education are excellent. Da Vinci's been very generous with me in terms of my learning. I wanted proctors for pretty much everything. I just proctor, because I never felt comfortable. And eventually they're like, look, you're good enough, you don't need a proctor. I'm like, okay, fine. Support and analytics. My guy, Ray Witkowski, I can't see him because it's so bright up here, but Ray not only is great with the data, Ray is a fashion consultant for me, a fashionista, like, as we like to call him. He got me this suit, and I got to get out of here because it's rented, so I got to get it back by midnight tonight. But no, honestly, when we put our data together, Ray gave me the questions, the things to ask my patients, and we got this stuff done. And honestly, the data really tells the story, and I really want to thank Ray for that. He's been nothing but a great guy and a great friend. Pathway to success, anchor your surgeons and inguinals. What I can tell you guys, if you get a surgeon that you think is going to be a robotic surgeon, he does 2 or 3 inguinals and goes, hey, let's go do a colon. Bad move. Don't do it. You're going to stall him. He's going to get frustrated. It's just not going to go well. Don't do that. That's just not, it's not the way to do it. Get good at an inguinal. That's the baseline procedure for a general surgeon. That's the procedure that you have to get good at before you move on. I stalled initially. I was doing single-site choles. I was at a different point in my career, to be very honest with you. My practice was just starting. I was building my practice. I didn't have the time, the energy, or the gumption to put into learning the robot. And so I did a handful of them. I stalled, and I came back. But the multi-port chole is, for me, is a very, very good procedure. I love doing it. It's a much easier procedure than a laparoscopic procedure, just from a visualization standpoint. It's not a different procedure, so to speak, like the inguinal is from an open and robotic, but just from a visualization standpoint and ease of operating, it's a much nicer procedure. And the Firefly is a built-in cholangiogram, which if you want to avoid bile duct injuries, a cholangiogram is really the way to go. So what is the end goal here? As Jason said, we want to make your surgeons total practice surgeons, but don't go out too quick. Start with inguinals, move on to some choles, get them good at stuff before you branch out to foregut and colon, because again, if you're not good on the robot with the smaller cases, it's going to be really difficult to be good on the robot with the bigger cases. And the quadruple aim, which you guys have talked about, and they talked about at 360 this year, improved outcomes, improved physician satisfaction, lower cost, and really most importantly, better patient experience. I can tell you, by and large, my patients feel much better, do much better, and it's gratifying for them, but it's really ultimately gratifying for me. So what do you guys need to do? You guys need to take action. You guys need to get your surgeons involved. You need to incorporate them into the robotics. Discuss with your surgeons, as I said, the pain issue. And another thing, don't tell your surgeon what their competitor is doing, because no one wants to hear what their competitor is doing. That's a turnoff for any surgeon. Tell them what someone in Las Vegas is doing or in Oakland is doing. Someone they don't know, that's someone they can refer to nationally. You don't want to tell your surgeon what their competitor is doing. That's a big turnoff for them. Anchor them in the inguinal, get them good at the inguinal. It's the baseline procedure for a general surgeon. It's the first procedure we learn is our internship year. It's the one that we do probably more of than anyone. Have them master it, and trust me, they will enjoy it. And set an objective for 20 cases a quarter. I think that's a little low, but if that's what you guys want, 20 is fine for me. And then ultimately, grow your surgeon's practice. Again, don't make them a super user. I always hear this, well, I use the robot for the bilaterals and the recurrences and the scrotal hernias. And I always say to myself, Tom Brady plays in the first quarter. They don't bring him in the fourth quarter when they're down by 7 points. So if you're going to use the robot for, I'm not a Tom Brady fan, but if you're going to use the robot, I figured everyone would know him. If you're going to use the robot for the hard cases and the difficult cases, why are you not using it for the easy cases? I don't understand that motto. I don't understand that concept that some surgeons have, but they do. But my point is that they don't have to be super users. They can be full-in, all robotic surgeons. So if you want to come out to Vegas, we'd love to have you. I enjoy teaching. I enjoy going over stuff with the docs and the CSRs. And if you can bring some of the OR staff as well to see how we do it, that would be a bonus too. So with that, again, thank you very much for coming out. Thank you for listening, and I appreciate it.